Well, here we are, Fatty, at the start line, Leadville Trail 100, 2019 edition. Number what again for you?
23rd start. With any luck, though, my 22nd finish.
Okay, 23rd start. Going for number 22 across the finish line here at 6th and Harrison. So, first question, how was the rest last night?
Believe it or not, I got 7 hours of sleep last night. I took 2 50-milligram gels, like I said I was going to, and we watched a little bit of the Twilight Zone. The combination of those two things, I was out. I got a good night's sleep.
So a little CBD from Floyd's of Leadville and some Twilight Zone, huh?
Yeah, an old show that is in a lot of ways comfort food for the brain.
Yeah. Now, through your training, you have found that Floyd's of Leadville products have helped you recover from all your efforts, from all your races to get to this day?
They really have, and I mean, I have the recovery mix along with a banana and a scoop of peanut butter ready to mix up using the recipe that we used earlier after the Columbine ride at the Floyd's ride. That was so good.
Yeah. It's been really cool hanging out with Floyd Landis this week in what is his hometown for his retail store. If you want to, and I'll have to say, Eddie, I too, throughout the spring and summer, have been using Floyd's products with great recovery every time. If you want to learn more about Floyd's products, go to floydsofleadville.com. Use the code FATTY at checkout for a discount. And Fatty, let's get this thing going, huh?
So excited. Yeah, the CBD does not prevent the amp at the beginning of the race.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race. This is season 2, episode 23. I know it sounds weird to be hearing that right now, right here, because we are at the start line of the 2019 Leadville Trail 100. This, of course, is the race that, well, we break it down, build it up, freak you out, but that's all over with now. It is race day. I'm here with Fatty at the start line. Eldon Fatty Nelson going for his 22nd finish, 23rd start, 22nd finish. Fatty, first of all, this morning is incredibly balmy. I mean, in your years here, have you ever felt you have no leggings on, no extra coat on, pretty warm day?
I don't think I have ever come here without having some track pants that I can get rid of. I usually wear a very heavy coat. I'm wearing a windbreaker that I'm going to hand to you in a second. And mercy, it's looking really good. May want a raincoat in the final quarter of the day, but I think it's going to be a fast day, and looking forward to it, man. Yeah,
we've been riding the course some this week. There's a lot of anticipation about great times going down. And how do you feel about your chances today of meeting a goal?
I think that my 8:45 goal is realistic, and I am going to try to stick to the pace that I need for that. And you watch. If I can be smart, I think I can do it.
Yeah, I think so too. So we're going to be documenting Fatty's trip around Leadville as best we can from an audio perspective, obviously, for playback on the podcast later. I'm going to see you out at Twin Lakes alternate feed. This is going to be your first run into alternate feed. I guess I'm glad I was able to convince you. What put you over the top? Why did you say, well, I'm going to give all, because, there's a lot at stake for you and your family. What made you decide alternate feed would be a good decision?
Honestly, I have a lot of confidence in my crew chief. You're the one who is taking care of me all day. If I can't trust the crew chief, who can I trust? And I've always seen it. I always thought, well, this seems like a great place to be, a little less crowded. I think it's going to be a great change.
So no wave starts this year, so we're going up in traditional fashion. Corrals aren't tradition, because when you first came here, there weren't even corrals. At least we have corrals right now. So we should have the normal dash out of town. As you head down 6th here, what's the first thing you look for?
I will look for where people start going uphill, because you go from everyone railing on the pedals to hitting their brakes hard. It is super easy to touch someone's rear wheel if you are not careful. I will be careful.
Now we'll get down and make a hard right down there. There's a Sandy in the right-hand corner. And then you're on your way. You're on your way to Keevens. When you hit Keevens, what's your mindset? What do you try? I know what I would try to do. Once it started pitching up, I try to settle in. I wouldn't get too pushy. but you got to move around, right, when people are clogging your way.
Yeah, I really have to fight my inclinations. You know, I'm a standing climber, I'm a powerful climber, and I really just everything I can do to not just ratchet it up into a tall gear, stand up, and look for every possible pass. It's a stupid idea to do because you're being a Roman candle. You're burning hot to gain 15 feet, 20 feet in a race that's 103 miles. What I'm going to try to do is stay with the group, ride with my mind instead of with my heart, and save it for the second half of the race.
So this has been a really great week here. A little stressful. I mean, you and I both had plenty to do. How, as you stand here at the start line, what are you thinking? Are you thinking, did I overdo it all week? Am I ready for this? It was a great week because we were interacting with a lot of our great listeners, but it was a stressful week too.
Without question, it was a very busy week, but I knew what it would be coming in. And I've had the funnest week I've ever had at Leadville. All the rides with different racers and talking with people, seeing people at the live podcast and talking with Jeremiah Johnson yesterday and, the Goo Crew the day before. Honestly, it has been a way just to sort of meet the tribe, and these are our people, and what could be better than spending a week with them. So my day might be a little slower because of that. So what? I'm 53. If I get anything sub 9, I'm going to be ecstatic, and I really think that is possible.
And as always, I mean, as you stand here at the line, there's some new story. I mean, you have 23 stories here, but there'll be a 24th. There'll be something unique that comes out of this event that you'll be able to tell down the road amongst your many stories here at Leadville.
Yeah, my expectation is that this story will be about riding with or chasing my stepdaughter, Melissa. She has gone from being someone who was a good solid 10-hour finisher to beating me in every race we've done this year. I'm expecting that I will be looking at her in her bright pink kit and seeing her lay down a performance that is going to make me super excited and super proud. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the next generation is going to do.
Well, it's why we come back, because the place always offers something. It's not the same it's the same course, but it's not the same race every year, and it's why we come here. Whether you're standing on the sidelines cheering, riding the bike through this thing, whatever, it always offers us something to tell in the end.
Yep, we're all a little different every year we come. I'm a year older. I've had a year more experience, and I've had another year of fun. I'm just looking forward to seeing what unfolds. I love the stories.
All right, buddy. Well, I've enjoyed doing season 2 with you. I'm going to see you at Twin Lakes next. Ride safe. Pick a good wheel. Don't blow it on Keevans, and I'll be standing there with a bottle or a pack or whatever you need at Twin Lakes.
All right. Thanks so much, crew chief. See you soon.
Now, it was my intent, Fatty, to grab another recording of the countdown at the start line. Like the one you hear in our opening theme. But damn, Fatty, the LT100 crew was in such a hurry this year. They played the anthem and then went straight into that 10-second countdown.
Yeah, I was scrambling to get my helmet on and then my glasses into the right place before the shotgun went off. Right out of that, they were like, okay, 10 seconds. And I'm like, okay, I got to start my Garmin and get my helmet on and get my glasses on. And I saw other people were having the same challenge. I understand that, there was a lot of surprise with that. Maybe the song went on a few seconds longer than they expected.
Yeah, they're sticking to the clock there at the 6th and Harrison in the second Saturday of August. They want to get off.
Oh yeah, they do it on 6:30 a.m. on the sharp. They are going then.
So while you were trying to strap your helmet on, I was fumbling for my recorder, but the only thing I got on tape was me cussing the fact that I'd missed my big moment to grab that 10-987-654-321. You're off. The shotgun blast. Sorry, folks. I wanted a new one for you, but just didn't get there.
Season 3 opening theme is going to be Michael Hottie swearing into the mic.
Right. Such is life in the big business of podcasting. Nonetheless, Fatty, you and the entire Fatty clan, Lisa the Hammer, Melissa, Jeff, Dave, Chris, and Rui were off and running, and I was headed to Twin Lakes alternate to catch up with Mrs. Hottie, who had flown in the day before for another edition of Leadville Mountain Bike Magic.
Yeah. had a lot of family and friends out on the course this year, Hottie, which always makes for a lot of fun, especially since this year we were all wearing that new Leadville 100 podcast kit, this very limited edition, not for sale, about 15 of them made. One of the guys, a friend from back when I was doing the fatcyclist.com blog, 5-6 years ago, he ran into some real trouble very early in the race. And I talked to him about it, about how one of our sponsors saved his day. It's the day after the Leadville 100. I'm sitting here with one of my good friends, Chris, who did the race. This was how many times for you, Chris?
My second time.
And how'd the day go for you?
Well, it was hard. It was a different kind of hard than the last time. Mm-hmm. The last time I had plenty of base fitness, but my nutrition plan was way off. This time my nutrition plan was spot on, but because of my broken shoulder earlier in the season, I never really had time for base, so I skipped it, and that was a huge problem. But
you did finish the race. You did have a what we'll call a bad moment out on the course. Tell me about that.
Early on, I was descending power line right near the top in one of the baby head sections. Basically, I was choosing the B lines because there were just slow people.
And you're fast. You're a strong, fast descender. You don't have to claim that, but I've seen you, and I know you are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going, right? And, I'm bouncing over the stones and whatnot, and something nicked my tire on the sidewall, and it went flat instantly.
Yeah, one of those where it's not a question. It's like, am I getting a little soft? It's like, bam, and you suddenly were completely flat.
Yeah, and I'm still going down baby heads, and there's nowhere off. Like the off is a cliffside, so I just had to roll it maybe 200 yards to find a place to jump out and fix my tire.
And normally that would be a disaster, rolling 200 yards on a completely flat wheel. But what kind of wheels were you using?
Envy wheels.
And specifically, you were riding on?
The M5.
Okay.
Or M525, sorry.
Okay, yeah. I was wondering if you were on the M50s or okay, so the 525s. Awesome. Same tire or same wheel as me.
Yeah. And knowing that, because I still had baby heads to hit or go over, because there's no way. I mean, it was just there were people behind me at that point following me down. So I just had to go.
So a couple hundred yards on a completely flat carbon rim. And how much damage did the rim take?
None.
Wow.
The bead didn't even break off the tire. I was able to put my plug in it, roll the tire around to get some sealant on there, CO2 to back up to pressure, and I was going. I checked my Strava. It was 3.5 minutes total from the time I stopped to starting again. So
wow. That is fantastic. And you could say in a way your day was saved by your Envy wheels.
Yeah. And I beat my previous time.
Congratulations. That is awesome. So just finishing up a quick plug for Envy, that's enve.com. When we say that they are built as if they were with the Leadville 100 in mind, in Chris's case, they really were. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Congrats, Chris, for sticking with it there. And while Envy gets the kudos, of course, Chris gets a medal for sticking with it through thick and thin. That's a big problem to have early on in the race, and he really, kept his calm and took care of the problem and moved on. And Envy helped him out too, so that's great.
Yeah, 3 minutes. A 3-minute tire fix is nothing to sneeze at, and he bested his own time.
Yeah, I've seen many a rider, including a teammate, have their days ruined or even ended after early trouble on the Leadville course.
Yeah, I was luckier this year. I didn't have any incidents during that first third of the race, but I did hear about some crazy stuff happening over those opening miles. While I had maybe one of the easiest, smoothest rolls out of town as I ever have, riders in the corrals a little bit further back were talking about all kinds of crazy things happening. And I don't mean crazy in a good way either. There were riders sniping at each other over line choices on the pavement, of all things. And my good friend Rohit said he actually witnessed on the St. Kevin's climb a fight. And I don't mean people just like yelling at each other. There was actual physical contact. There was a person who was they were yelling at each other. I don't know. I can't recall perfectly the whole story, but there was some pushing and then some smacking.
Huh.
over line choice. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. I mean, people just got to keep their calm a little bit. I understand. People hit Kevins and they're all amped up.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They just bomb down the descent, and tensions can run a little high there, especially for when you get in a traffic jam.
Yeah, and no question about it. So we all need to, I think, make a mountain bikers pact of some sort, especially some sort of endurance cyclist pact. We're all out there trying to have a great day there. So everyone, as long as you're not riding your bike, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. I promise that while I'm on my mountain bike, whether in the Leadville 100 or elsewhere, I will treat others with respect and dignity. I'll pass with care. I will allow faster riders room to get by without argument. I do this in the name of great mountain bikers past and present, so help me Gary Fisher.
I do. I swear. I promise.
I think that's something we could probably all get behind. Maybe a little harder to do when you are thinking that, this is your moment for glory, but it's, you back off, calm down a little right now. You're going to have a little more energy in the race later.
Yeah, next year in the feed zone, I'll be handing out promise pledges. Laminated cards with those words on it.
There you go. Make everyone put their hand on the mountain biker's Bible.
Uh-huh. It was not too long after Chris ran into trouble that I got an update that two of our fast riders, Jeff and Stuart, were already through pipeline. These guys were both shooting for sub-8 times, and not just like 7:59 or something, but they were looking for a time in the low 7s. So they were through the first check, and then along came Fatty.
Yeah, it's in that first part of the race, between pipeline outbound and the alternate feed, in this case for me, that you really start meeting the people that you're going to be riding with all day. And there was a guy I ran into who I grabbed onto his wheel and rode behind him for a little while. And he was going so fast that I could not I couldn't come around and take a turn. And he got super upset for a little while. And he eventually dropped me. I caught him back later on. And I didn't apologize. I didn't feel like there was any apology I could make. I was doing the best I could at the moment. But I did give him a pull and said, hey, payback time. And he and I wound up riding, I bet, 2/3 of the race within 50 feet of each other. It was kind of funny that way. The people that you yell at, you may find out later during the race that you're going to be riding with them.
Yeah, this is one area of the race. I generally know what to do in its several sectors of the Leadville Trail 100. This area always confuses me a little bit. It's like, are we trying to pace ourselves still here, or is this an opportunity to go fast? I see differing opinions as people move out of the pipeline feed, up that slight drag there, and then into the zigzaggy sections. You see differing opinions in there about what to do. Is this a fast section? Is this a section where you're still trying to conserve and save it for the Columbine climb?
I would say if you find yourself beginning the Columbine climb with tired legs, you've made a grave error. It is a time to work together if you can, and to keep your legs fresh, because you haven't even done any of the real challenging climbs yet. If you arrive at Columbine tired, whoa, you've gone too hard. And then if you get to finish Columbine and you hit Powerline extremely tired, then your race is over right at the point where really it begins.
You know what you and I rarely talk about on this show, and we've broken this show down, or the race course down piece by piece, is the single track section. Now, it's not very long.
No.
I think a lot of mountain bikers, pure mountain bikers, love this moment because this is where they feel at home.
Sure, comfort food.
Right, it's single track. Everyone wants to see a little single track. How did it go for you? Anything different about the sector this year?
Outbound, I would say that it was different in that I did not wind up at the back of a train. There were so many people, or I guess I should say, there were so few people ahead of or behind me, whether because I was doing really well this year or because maybe there was someone who was holding other people back further behind me. But usually there's some pressure from behind, or there is someone that I catch up to who I'm, kind of hoping I can get around. This year, I mean, in spite of the fact that I had been out for less than 2.5 hours, maybe I was right at 2.5 hours, I felt like I was almost all by myself. How was that even possible in a race with 1,600 people in it?
Right. Based on what you've been telling me so far, it sounded like we had waves without waves. I mean, it sounds like you got your space right away from the beginning of the race all the way out to the single track. You had your space to operate almost as if there was a wave start.
It was like that for me, I was only, I was pretty close to the front. And so I had a very luxurious spot, you could almost say. Yeah. And I'm sure that it was very different. And we hear that it was different, people actually coming to blows back in the, back in the middle third to back third of the race. But I am hopeful, based on my position and how clean and open the course felt to me, that if we do get to waves, that'll be an experience held by more people in the field. And then, of course, we get to Twin Lakes Dam, where you used to take your feed, and the trail leading up to alternate feed, things went pretty normal through there. Yeah, it was kind of interesting going through and not putting a foot down where usually I can plan to stop for a minute or so. So I was able to maybe, instead of thinking about food and eating, I was able to enjoy the real carnival atmosphere. And it is, yeah. Oh, it truly is. I mean, it is a wall of sound and people and enthusiasm. And if you're the kind of person who feeds off that energy, and I certainly am, then if you just, raise your hands and maybe yell a little bit for them, they'll return it to you tenfold. They really will. Yep. So as I rolled through that, I continued on. I saw, believe it or not, I passed, and this is maybe one of my moments of true glory in cycling. I passed Jonathan Lee of Trainer Road. That's right. I rolled right by him, and he recognized me before I recognized him. He goes, "Hey, fatty." And I'm like, I look over, Jonathan? Because Jonathan, as you know, you and I've talked about him on this show. I was expecting him to be a 7:30 guy. He is very fast, very strong, and I didn't have any time to ask, what's going on? But I did. I said, what is going on? And he said, I'm just pedaling along. And I thought, well, we'll sort this out later. Right. And it's a question I've not sorted out yet. This wasn't his A race. He had said as much before. But it was interesting to pass him. He did eventually, I will say, beat me by, I think, about half an hour in the race. So he did repass me, but there was a moment when I was faster than Jonathan Lee. I'll carry that in my heart forever. As you should. Well, we're closing in on the alternate feed zone, and coming up, we are going to give you a real-time listen to Fatty's feeds at the Twin Lakes alternate feed zone. It's a great look at how much valuable time can be saved when you're actually just standing still. Yeah. But before executing your feeds, Fatty, I went through your feed bags, and I was pleased to see items you had been talking about all through season 2 of this show. Yeah, when we went through in our racer meeting the night before and just touched on everything here, I was like, well, this is pretty much a recap of a typical feed spot. And I don't really know many people who are happy that they made a last-minute change in the race the night before, and I certainly didn't. I can say, I should say, I did meet a lot of people the week before this race who said that they were really glad they took our advice in this podcast and were racing with what they had trained with. Yep, absolutely. Of course, on race day, you stick with something you trained and raced with throughout the season. I know this because I was the one mixing Morton 160 into your bottles for you. You can also you can get Morton through the feed, our good friends at the feed, who, by the way, were here at the Leadville Trail 100, showing off all of their fine products that you can get in their boxes. You can get your feed box or any items from the feed. Thanks to this show, you can get a 15% discount. It's the Leadville 15 code we want you to use for any amount of Morton at thefeed.com. Again, thefeed.com/Leadville. Use the Leadville 15 code at checkout. Now, Fatty, I was both surprised and pleased when you and your team decided to give the Twin Lakes alternate feed zone a try. For those who don't know, this is an area significantly smaller than the dam and closer to the base of Columbine by like 3 miles. So Mrs. Hottie headed there while I was with you at the start line earlier in the morning.
She got set up going before I even arrived. By the time I did get there, most of camp alternate, in quotation marks, was a stage, and I helped her with the finishing setup pieces. We had 5 riders to service, but for the purpose of this podcast, we will focus on just one, and that is you.
It's me that I focus on most of the time, too. We should note that for the setup of the feeds, that started for like 2 days before with the preliminary crew meeting where we met and had, I think, was it nachos that time? There was always food with our pre-race meetings, which there should be not a rule but a good guideline. And we discussed who would staff which feed zone, and we took inventory of all the riders in play. There were actual 1-on-2 interviews for each person with, when it was my turn, I talked with you, and Mrs. Hottie was there taking notes on her legal pad, and I felt important. I mean, I felt like, I am the focus of this race. And you went over all the specifics of what I needed for each stop, and I felt like the checklist that I had made before we had this meeting, that by the time we went through it, you knew it as well as I did. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that was a really inspiring aspect of the race before the race ever began.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would describe your needs as a racer, that is, as specific and ones that come from years of experiencing all sorts of issues at the Leadville Trail 100. You're just trying to protect against failures best you can when it comes to nutrition. So I get it. I get the electrolytes, the gas X, the use of bottles versus hydration packs, and when you like to use those, the upside down gels in the right pocket. It was a lot to remember, which is why we wrote it down. But with 2 of us on the job, both with experience, we figured we could cover all your needs and get you in and out in a timely fashion. And to illustrate this execution of a feed, I recorded both of your stops.
Which I did not realize as you were doing.
Yeah, I forgot too, in fact, as you'll hear. While the audio doesn't demonstrate the complete picture, it should reveal how quickly a Leadville stop can be done. So, here's Fatty's first stop into Twin Lakes Alternate. All right, Fatty, here we go now. All right.
She's really good about this.
How's everything going?
So good.
Yeah, you fucking rocking, dude.
I like it.
How's the bike?
The bike's perfect.
And warmers? You need your warmers off? Yeah, put your pack on last so you don't have to shoot it with it on.
Yeah.
Cool. Maybe you're all going top down. Got it. All right. You got your pills? Yeah. How about your glasses, dude? Glasses all right?
Yeah.
Glasses are clean.
Okay, whenever you're ready for the pack, we got, this goes in the cage.
This goes out.
Yep, let's do the pack.
You want ready?
Whenever. Yeah.
Okay. Left.
Yep.
Right.
So,
Good.
One thing.
And you got mud right in front of you, so we'll get you out of here. Huh?
Just
You want in front?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Go. You're clear right now if you want to go.
Want to bite?
No riders. There's riders coming.
Big
Go,
bad
go fast.
I'm killing it.
That was a good one.
Yep. I think that's
All right, we got Fatty through with a good stop. I'm out of breath.
good. All right. Now
So this is his other bottle. All right, Fatty's on his way. So Fatty, that stop was exactly 1 minute. Not bad considering the workload.
I mean, if you're saying not bad, you're giving yourself too low of a grade. A+ from me. Everything I wanted was exactly where I wanted it. You had everything taken care of, and you took no more time than I wanted anyway. I mean, I needed time to take to swallow 4 electrolyte pills and take a couple of bites of my bonk breaker bar. And by the time I had done those 2 things, you had my U-Squee pack on my shoulders. All I had to do was snap the connection shut, and I was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And something I never expected, but really appreciated, and I'm going to ask for going forward, is you said the trail is clear, you can go, which meant that I didn't have to crane my neck over my shoulder. My neck's already sore after 40 miles of riding. It was nice to be able to just know that I can go and I'm not going to clip someone's handlebars. as I pull back into the trail.
Oh, while you giggled and smiled your way up the Columbine climb, and I'm sure chatted with some of our listeners about how their day was. I imagine. We did service 2 of your family members, and during one, the Hotties did suffer their only hiccup, and that was a missed camelback reload. The time loss was maybe a minute to Lisa, the hammer, as she picked up on this little mishap before she even began the Columbine climb. But the Hotties...
Which was sharp of her.
Yeah,
I'm
very
really glad that she saw that.
I'm certain she didn't even make it to the goo truck where she turned around, and the next thing I knew, I was looking over my shoulder, and there was the hammer saying, "Hello, how about my camelback?" I was like, "Oh, yes, the camelback." So the Hotties have launched a full inquiry into what led to this oversight, and we'll be revealing the findings in a later show. Okay, Fatty, back to you.
All right. So I long ago, and I think this is something I've talked about more than practically anything else in this podcast, have instituted a non-negotiable pact with myself that I will eat and drink as I am going up Columbine. By doing so, I do not bonk as I am doing this the final third of the race, basically from Twin Lakes inbound through the rest of the course, and especially up Powerline. And so every half an hour I would get a chime, and I would have a goo octane. And then every few minutes, anytime I thought about it, essentially, I was having a drink out of my Camelback, which had Morton 160 in it. The 320 for me, under hard effort, just always felt a little bit too thick. I prefer the 160. It's a personal preference, right? Mm-hmm. So I am riding up. I cleaned the first pitch. The first part that I usually have to walk, thanks to the reroute, actually. And then the second part I had to do a little bit of walking, but it was when I wanted to walk, which is different than usual when you get off because there's a Congo line and you have no option. At the one place where I was like, I need to walk here. It's harder for me to ride than it is to walk. It was a decision to get off, rather than a force to get off, because there was no way I could continue riding. Yes. So a nice difference there for me.
I totally get the objective about forcing yourself to eat as you're climbing this monster, mm-hmm. but I also get I understand why other people fail to do so, because you're breathing so hard, right?
Triple time. Mm-hmm.
It's not only hard to eat when you're breathing that way, it's hard to even drink, because you feel like when you drink, you start gasping and you're not getting air. You're getting fluid, but now you're not getting air. I mean, was that just something you felt you got over at some point, and you learned how to inhale and intake at the same time?
Sure, a little bit. And part of that is by making some mechanical changes. And that is for Columbine. That is a part where I make myself use a U-Sweep pack or Camelback, whatever fits you comfortably, and you can basically hook that on in a corner of your mouth and suck on it during the inhale, and then exhale, and while leaving the thing hanging there, so you can, without really losing any breaths, get in a suck or two of drink. And not start blacking out when it's at 11,500 feet. So yeah, you make you practice drinking while leaving the thing hooked in your mouth. Practice drinking and breathing at the same time, and you can keep some fluid in there, and then slow down into your very, very granny gear when you get that chime. Suck down a gel. Maybe it takes a couple of breaths to get it all down. Make sure you take a swallow of water. And, keep going. It's just, you got to make yourself eat. It doesn't get to be optional.
And you use the same technique on the descent?
No, during the descent, I do not eat at all. Then the Camelback is fantastic, and it has calories in it as well. There is no way during the descent down Columbine that I have even 2 seconds. I don't know if there's a single place where I could ride one-handed for even.
But you are taking in fluids at this time.
I am taking in fluids, and that's what a Camelback is great for. I don't have time to grab a bottle
or a U-Sweep pack or whatever you're wearing.
Right, whatever. Yeah, I'm using Camelback in the same way we all say Xerox, right? It's sort of a generic term for me. Yeah, I love the U-Sweep pack. My wife does love. She likes the Camelback chase vest, which I saw a lot of out there on the course. I'm pretty agnostic as to what type you use. You use what's comfortable and what works for you. For me, it's a U-Sweep.
Yeah. Again, reaching for a bottle when you're screaming down that mountain seems. I like your technique there. I mean, I like that idea of just putting that thing in the corner of your mouth,
Just
and
let it
suck
hang
on
there.
even when you're going downhill. Now,
Yeah.
back at the feed zone, Mrs. Hottie and I prepped your next stop, which would be similar to the first, except instead of a hydration pack, as we just talked about, you would get fluids from 2 fresh bottles. Here is stop number 2 at Twin Lakes Alternate.
Good. Give me extra electrolytes. I'm cramping. Otherwise, I'm great. Like 6 instead of 4.
How are the sunglasses doing?
I think I'm great.
This is the goo is going to be on your seat tube. I'm sorry, the Morton's on your seat tube. Morton.
Pills,
You want
yes.
the fresh load? I'm going to take everything that's in there out.
Yeah,
You want-
good.
All right, you're doing great though, man. I mean, you're ahead of schedule.
No, I'm great. Thank you.
Glass is good. Everything else good.
I'm fantastic. Thank you.
All right, here we go. Claire, go. All right, Fatty, now we're talking 48 seconds in and out. A refueled rider on their way to Pipeline. Pretty good little stop there. Huh?
Less than 1 minute. You are not taking much time off of my moving time count in Strava.
Oh, yeah, I was pleased with that stop. Let's just say that. Look, before I came out to Leadville, there's a little story, a little side note here. Before I came to Leadville, my brother-in-law, a huge Formula One racing fan, told me that recently Team Red Bull had set a record for fastest pit, and that record is 1.8 seconds.
Wow.
That's bringing a screaming race car to a full stop, jacking up both ends, changing 4 tires, lowering the car, and getting it out of the pit in 1.8 seconds. Now, look, a Specialized Epic S-Works hardtail is no F1 car, and Mr. and Mrs. Hottie hardly wear fire suits and helmets in the alternate feed zone, but some of that same F1 mentality applies. You plan, prepare, and execute, and you will save time that you can quantify as you go over your Strava file at the end of the LT100.
Yeah, both you and Mrs. Hottie were just right there taking care of everything, and I almost could visualize the checklist as I had written it down as you were talking through it in that little recorded spot there, doing exactly all the things that I needed you to do. Mm-hmm. And that, really is confidence inspiring. It is nice to know as you are leaving the cruise station that all of the things that you have thought about for your entire season while training are actually there during this important race.
Right. Look, do things go perfect in the feed zone? No. As we said with Lisa the Hammer, we missed something with her. Can things go faster? Sure, we did that. We did 2 hand-ups with Jeff and Stewart. One was a musette. The other was just bottle hand-up. I actually handed up to Jeff a hydration pack on the fly, which I thought was amazing. And he just strapped the thing on and went. That was going inbound. So there are ways to do it faster. There are ways to mess it up, obviously. But hopefully you can execute your plan and save, again, time you will notice by the end of the day.
Yeah, it all adds up.
Yeah, it really does. Hey, look, standing in the feed zone, I can't tell you, Fatty, how many Banjo Brothers bags I saw go whizzing by me. And not just seat bags. I saw quite a few top 2 bags also in play at this year's LT100.
Very cool.
And when I did ride this past week, like our little ride up Columbine and the Goo Energy ride on Thursday, frequently I would see the Banjo Brothers logo staring me from the seat bag in front of me.
Yeah, I saw a lot of those too, and I always love seeing those. I always like seeing them as I was approaching from behind rather than when someone was passing me and pulling away. But I like them both nevertheless. I did, of course, have the small seat bag to carry all of my own flat repair essentials. Thankfully, I never needed to unzip that pack this last Leadville 100, but knowing that it was there and that it was not going to come flying off as I was bouncing my way down the power line or down down Columbine is a real, I'm using the word confidence booster or the term confidence booster a lot in this show, but that is a big part of having a great day on the course.
Absolutely. You can get 20% off your order by going to banjobrothers.com /fatty-favorites. Banjo Brothers is tough, practical, affordable, and let's add reliable to the mix. They are Minneapolis-based, in business since 2003. They're good guys. To get 15% off your order, go to banjobrothers.com /fatty-favorites. While you were powering towards the power line, Fatty, I headed for the finish line. Now, this section, especially once you hit the straight portion of the pipeline dirt road all the way up to the power line climb, is notorious for headwinds.
Oh, it is.
Right? We noted that the weather was different in the morning, as in warmer at the start line. Now, tell me, what was happening in the afternoon as you made the big push for home?
Okay. There was a substantially lesser headwind than I am used to. In fact, honestly, I haven't thought about that until you bring it up, that this may be the first year that I did not have a huge morale drop while on the pavement because of the headwind. You know how that can leave you just feeling shattered, that you've been motoring along, feeling good. Suddenly you hit the pavement, you can't seem to put together a group, and your morale just drops through the floor, and you feel like, oh, I'm going 4 miles an hour, and I have the power line coming up in those 4 miles that are going to take me an hour to get to. This year, instead, as I pulled into the pipeline crew station where Blake was taking care of me instead of you, because we were doing sort of zone defense in crewing, Melissa pulled away. So we were within a minute or so. And Blake took just about a minute, as you did, so that by the time I pulled out, I had a pretty good idea. Melissa was about a minute ahead of me. We were very close. So by the time I got onto the pavement, I could see that she, in her very highly saturated magenta/pink, I mean, almost as if it was battery powered, extremely bright kit, easy to pick out in a crowd, which is nice for anyone crewing for, that she was in sight, she a dot on the horizon, but in sight. I was successful in putting together a pace line, which is a kind of rare thing in a group of strangers competing against each other. But, I picked up a couple of people, and then those these couples of people, we had a group of around 8. And it was a little bit disorganized, but I thought, well, if maybe I can do some organization. And usually as a disorganized guy, that doesn't even occur to me. But I just yelled 10-second pulls, then roll off left. And apparently people just needed to hear something that they could use because they followed those instructions. People stopped taking those, the monster pulls where they get to the front and feel like they aren't being a contributor to the group if they don't pull for at least a minute, and by then they've faded. And then the next guy, as they finally fall off and blow off the back and disappear, the next guy, essentially ramps it up out of wanting to get to the right speed and overshoots, and then the group falls apart and there's nothing left. Instead, this time, essentially by the time someone rolled to the front, they would peel off left and drift off back. We had a beautiful rotating echelon, a group of strangers in a riding working echelon, and we were making great time. It kind of fell apart after we made the turn. It's not like we'd practiced together, and things kind of broke up. As some people executed a little bit better, sharper turns and kept their speed, while others fell off the back. But we made some pretty good time. By the time I got to the first climb, or the first part, the straight sort of double track that leads to the very steep, newly graded part of Powerline, that's when I saw Melissa and caught up with her, and we were riding together for a couple of minutes. And while we were doing that, someone else asked, "Hey, are we still on track for is a sub 9 a possibility?" And I looked down, and I have on my Garmin Climb Pro, I know exactly how long we've been there, how much climbing we have left to do, and I'm an encyclopedia of knowledge, and I know by looking at this that sub 9 is a possibility. We're not going to have a luxurious amount of time, but if we ride smart and we ride strong, then yes, we could do it. And I'm about to say that yes, 9:30 or a sub 9 is possible. When some third rider says, "Oh yeah, we're going to hit 8:30, no problem." And I was just astonished. I was like, "No." And I said, 8:30 is not going to happen. We're an 8:45 group if we are smart and strong.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and stick by those numbers. It was pretty close to how it wound up. But
Right.
we kept on pushing, and I passed. There was someone who was in a kilt and had bagpipes, and he was not playing, for which I will be eternally grateful, because there is no sound I hate worse than the sound of bagpipes.
You know, we had a bagpiper at a Twin Lakes alternate for a while too. Maybe it's the same guy.
Very likely the same guy.
He's very fast if it's the same guy.
Maybe he had a tailwind. Anyway, I was glad to see him. Also glad he wasn't playing. No offense intended to bagpipe players. There are certain tones that send me a little sideways. So anyway, as I hit the hard part of the power line climb, I went into a small and then into my granny gear, my lowest gear, because I had a thought. I had made the first hairpin turn, which is very steep and very, and it used to be pretty technical. Now it's not technical at all. And so I was still on my bike, and I had a thought. If I stay in my granny, maybe I can actually clean this thing. And I rode, and I was continuing to go up. And while I felt like it was going very slow, I was passing people who were walking. And so I thought, well, while I'm spinning a pretty light gear, I am passing people who are pushing. And so this is still faster. It's sometimes hard to tell,
Right.
when you're really spinning uphill, you're like, is this any faster than walking? The answer is, yeah, it is. It's a little bbit faster than walking. And a couple of people, very well-intentioned people, ran up to give me a push as sort of encouragement. And I actually put them off. I said, no. If I'm going to, in short terms, I obviously didn't have a lot of breath for a conversation. I said, got to do this by myself.
Yeah.
And if I was going to ride the entirety of Powerline, I wanted to be able to say I did it without anyone giving me a push, and I did.
Mm-hmm.
So, a moment of real pride.
Well,
for
look,
me.
the power line's not over. I mean,
No.
that top section is no piece of cake.
No, it is not. And I got offers for the top section to get a push as well.
The gravelly section, you had people up there too?
Yeah, the whole way up there. There are spectators really all along the course. It's not often on the power line that you are by yourself.
Yeah.
It's really a popular spot to watch people, because that is where the race is really happening, in your head. And really on the course, that is where people are really gutting it out and really sort of earning their buckle, I would say. And so I never put a foot down, never got a push, and I cleaned that whole thing. It's that is the first time during a race I have done it, and that's with 80 miles of effort in my legs. That's something that I'm going to, remember about this year forever. So I'm very proud of that.
Yep. Then Sugarloaf Descent, Hagerman without incident.
Yeah, had a lot of fun. Hagerman is cleaner than it has ever been. It's the first time that I've ever gone down that without needing to touch brakes. And it wasn't that I was somehow putting on some kind of skills clinic. There just weren't any stutter bumps, no brake bumps, or washboards. I've heard them call all of those things. In whatever you call them, there weren't any, and you were able just to haul down. I'm going 35 miles an hour and feeling perfectly confident in pulling out a gel and taking that on board. At that, it was that clean, that smooth. It was very nice for me.
Mm-hmm.
I had a good, strong pavement climb.
Lucky you. I hate that section.
I know a lot of people do, but you know me. I'm a standing climber. I put it in third and fourth gear, and I am just rowing that sucker like it's a single speed, because that somehow it seems like I am able to avoid cramps by doing that, because it is using my muscles in a different way and at a different rhythm than I have been through most of the day, and I seem to be able to make up time on people.
Yeah.
By the time I got to Carter, I knew that in the absence of a mechanical or a crash or a bonk or the number of things that can happen, it was about at 7:45, 7:50 on my GPS. I knew that you were at worst an hour from the finish line, and I knew that I was going to get sub 9.
Were you alone at this time?
No, I was never alone. Generally around the same people. Melissa is a little bit behind me at this point. I don't know whether she is 30 seconds behind me or a minute or 5 minutes. It's, your neck is so sore and tired. The craning around to see who's behind me. It's not that I don't care. It's just that I'm too old and stiff to do so. So I just, I look forward and I just keep riding the best I can, knowing that she is a gifted descender. I'm a strong climber. We each do what we're good at. There's a decent chance that we'll be within a minute or two at the finish line. And sure enough, when I was just about at the top of the boulevard, as anyone who's done this race knows, is that final 2-mile uphill dirt road. I hear her calling out, "Eldon!" And, sort of shifting to her perspective, she was with a group at that point, and she was yelling to them, "That's my dad, that's my dad," and completely baffling people, because most racers, especially of her age, in their early 20s, saying "that's my dad" are referring to a spectator on the side of the road, not to the old dude who is 50 yards or 50 feet, hard to say, up in front. But they worked together and they were able to make some time on me. I had a brief thought that she is a competitive person and I am a competitive person. And if she caught me before I got to the top of that last little road pitch, this could wind up being a sprint finish. And then I thought, no, I'm going to make sure that she and I get there. And and we're going to parade that in together. And we talked about it for a second. It's like, okay, are we going to hold hands up together? And yes, we are. We're going to do that. Okay, and we're going to do it here. And okay, well, let's make sure that we don't auger into each other and crash at the end. And we crossed the finish line together, and it was a spectacular moment. I mean, just amazing, unplanned, organic, wonderful thing where, this incredibly fast young woman and me are crossing this race that we both have completely emptied ourselves out into. Honestly, couldn't have expected a happier moment. It was great.
Next finisher. How about Melissa Rollins, 23 years young, Salt Lake City, Utah, crushing it out there today. Way to go, Melissa. Look at that, hand in hand there with Eldon Nelson out of Alpine, Utah. Grand Rapids, Michigan, Steve Coots getting it done.
Yeah, Fred, it was a really cool moment. I mean, seeing family come together. There's a lot of those moments when you're standing there. I was standing off to the side, short of the red carpet, and saw a lot of those family moments. Yours was great. After seeing Melissa come through the feed zone at alternate feed, I could tell she was having a good day, and that was just a great capper to it all to see both of you cross together. Then I'll let you rest for just a little bit. I think you needed like 5 little cups of Coke and maybe some cookies. I don't know.
Some
if there was
watermelon. Mrs. Hottie brought me 2 slices of watermelon.
That's right.
So good.
I was just letting the endorphins kind of come just enough so you could collect yourself. And then we sat down to get some immediate reaction on the day. Listen to this. Well, first of all, welcome back to 6th and Harrison. You made it. You're alive. And you beat your projected time. So I think overall you must be pleased with the day.
More than pleased. I'm ecstatic with the day. Short version, never had to put on a raincoat. It didn't rain on me. I, like you said, finished a few minutes faster than I had even hoped to. And just as a bonus, Melissa and I actually finished hands raised together. We didn't race together much, but we crossed paths multiple times during the day and finished both of us getting a sub 9. So I can't think of a way I would say this day went better. By the way, you did a fantastic job crewing. You and Mrs. Hottie were so on top of your game. How many people did you wind up crewing for?
I think it was 5 and a half. Maybe we helped out some other people along the way too. You know how that works out sometimes in the crewing situation. People need help spontaneously, and we're happy to give it. Let me ask you about this. I mean, we noticed early on, not only with the leaders of the race, but yourself as you came through, that people were beating their projected times. What was going on out there? Was the course running fast? Was it the weather? What was happening out there?
Well, I think that the grading of power line really did make a difference. For me, not so much with the downhill. I'll have to see my results later, but for sure I had a very fast power line inbound, that is climbing. For the first time in 22 finishes, I climbed the entirety of power line from bottom to top without putting a foot down. Rode the whole thing.
But-
I'm very proud of that.
Right, but overall, was the course, did it feel faster? Because it sure seemed that way. People seemed to be flying.
It was fast. We were, there were very few places where there was any feeling of slowness or any kind of sand. It's just all of the little rains that have come in through the week have really packed it down. I mean, the fact that I was able to keep one set of glasses on the whole day really tells a story. There was way less sand and dust in the air, and we were just able to roll fast.
Yeah. Now, last year when you and I did some follow-up shows regarding the LT 100 2018 version, there was a lot of discussion about the Columbine section going up and the reroute. What was going on up there this year?
The reroute is now the actual route. It is, apparently there was a conflict as to who owned the road, and it's been resolved, and so this new reroute is in place. I'm going to tell you, I actually prefer it when I'm not having to walk it. I was far enough up at this time that I was able to ride all of that, skipping one of the times that I would have to get off and push. I normally have to get off in two places and push. This time, only one. And I know that Melissa rode the entirety of Columbine. That tells you something.
I always love your quote. This is an eating and drinking race.
Yes.
This is a race. Rather, give me the quote again. How does it go again?
Leadville is an eating contest disguised as a race.
Okay, so since it's such an important part of your day, how did that part of it go?
I have gotten so good at being very disciplined about my eating. I stayed on top of it. You always had the food and the drink I had asked for, and I never missed a single time to eat. If anything, I would eat a minute or two early, knowing that there might be a little bit trickier climb or descent coming up. So, like clockwork, 250 calories per hour every hour.
Excellent. You know, we talked a lot about the wave starts coming into this race, and then they got canceled.
Yep.
What are your feelings now? Do you still, I know that it was one thing, if Fatty were the race director, he'd do wave starts. Do you still believe in those?
I'm going to need to talk to some folks who were in further back corrals. Since I was in the red corral, things were really just nice for me. I was able to take off at speed, and there was maybe 50 feet of people ahead of me when I started, and I never felt like people were dangerously passing me. It might be that I've finally picked up some skills too, that I am a little faster myself, and so I am not being surged by the way that I had been for decades. The short version is, I felt like, at least for me, in the third corral back, that things were as good as if there had been wave start. But I got to ask my friend Dave, who was in the white corral, what his impressions were of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to get sorted out as we do our follow-up episodes. What's going to happen to waves? Are they going to be able to implement them? It seems like they will be able to, because the will is there. The race wants to do it. They just have to work it out with the local authorities to make that happen. So I would say, yeah, look for waves in this race. They'll at least try them at some point, and that seems like the right thing to do. Okay, you brought up taking feeds. Let's talk about the alternate feed zone. This is a departure for you and your entire race team, for that matter. What did it do to the rhythm of your race using alternate feed as opposed to the Twin Lakes Dam?
I loved it. I'm not going to even call it the alternate feed anymore. I'm going to just call it the first feed. It really is not much further along, and then it gives me a momentary break, and then with all the food and all the drink I need, without the crowding, I'm able to get rolling again, and up Columbine we go.
Yeah.
So I like it a lot. I think that was a good call.
Yeah. And then of course you reached your crew sooner than you otherwise would if they were at Twin Lakes Dam, which some people tend to like too. How long will it take you to break down this race, by the way? I mean, will you tinker over it long, or do you put it in the archives fairly quickly?
I think I'm going to spend a lot of time in Strava looking at how I did and where I did it. I feel like there were parts of this that, even as I'm into my 5th decade now, I feel like I was faster than I've ever been, and I feel more confident than I've ever been. So while I think my very top end is a little bit lower, this is the kind of race where you're not spending a ton of time at top end.
So it's a 20-second finish for you. And I bet you probably hear this a lot. I mean, will there be a 24th attempt and a 23rd finish? Or is it too early to kind of figure that out?
I'm doing it again. It's for one thing, Lisa just had her 14th finish. She's thinking about a 20th finish, right? So that's at least 6 more. And then I'm going to be close to 30, right? So you can see how this kind of goes, right? I have Leadville's been part of my summer for more than 2 decades. I have a hard time imagining it not be.
The racer's high is obviously so real. I sound happy and excited and practically incoherent. And I don't think all of that's entirely left. I can still feel a little punchy. I don't know how much of that is post-race, how much of that is 10,000 feet. But a big part of this racer's high is how well I did on the power line. I cleaned it for the first time ever during a race, and a huge part of that is being able to shift when you want, being able to make big jumps from first to third, and then third back to second, and then second back to first. XTR just does that so well.
Yeah, that cassette, that new XTR cassette is magical the way it shifts. I mean, what they've done with that thing to allow you to go up and down your cassette, even under stressful moments like the power line climb, is simply amazing. And I'll add to this, I'll add to what you have there. Both times you came through my feed zone, your drivetrain looked in great shape. In fact, I asked you twice if you needed any mechanical service, specifically the chain, and both times the answer was no, bike is great.
Yeah, I wasn't talking in very eloquently, but there wasn't a lot to say. It's everything was working so well.
And then after the race, I hopped on your bike, by the way. I don't know if you caught that.
I did. I saw you right away from me.
After 103 miles, I thought, I'm going to see what this XTR's got still. What, is this really still shifting good? I clicked up, clicked down, stood up just like Fatty would. The thing was still working flawlessly. Just a great drivetrain.
Medium bike does not fit you well. We'll say that.
But Shimano drivetrain does.
Yes, it does. Yeah, so both the Shimano XTR drivetrain and the brakes got a serious workout during this day. And I'm going to be in Leadville for another week. If I feel up to it, there's no reason I would have to do anything more than put some lube on the chain to go out, have a great ride tomorrow on some of the terrific single track they have in this area.
Yeah, go to bike.shimano.com for more. We will also have a link in the show notes for this episode at Leadville100podcast.com. All right. Man, that went by fast.
For us, it did.
So for now, let's just wrap up season 2, episode 23 of the Leadville podcast presented by Floyd's of Leadville. But we're not done telling stories about this edition of the Leadville Trail 100.
Yeah, I still have a lot of stories about my own race to tell, and there's more to come as we digest and dissect this 2019 race across the sky. I know it can take me days, if not weeks, to recall all the details of this 103-mile beatdown. And while Lisa's getting ready for the final leg of the Lead Woman, she's currently in second place for that, I'd like to point out. And that is the 100-mile run coming up this Saturday through Sunday. I will be going over my mental notes from this year's race and tracking down some stories from others who lined it up and make it back to 6th and Harrison. So keep checking your feed for more from this race and stuff you can use as you get ready for, yes, it's not too early to start planning for it, the 2020 Leadville Trail 100. I know for sure one of the stories Hottie and I are going to be chasing is the idea that nearly made it into this year's race and that is wave starts.
And remember, if you had something crazy or magnificent or tragic or triumphant happen during your go at the LT100, drop us a line. To do so, head to the Leadville100podcast.com comment section and get in touch.
Yeah, also follow me on Twitter. I am at Fat Cyclist. Hottie is at Michael Houghton, and you can find us on Facebook. We're both active in the Leadville 100 MTB participants group. If you've got a question, you can DM us, and there's a good chance we will answer it right here on the show.
Look, folks, we intend to keep this show going in some form or fashion, so please continue to show your support by giving us a 5-star rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. Also share it with your other cycling friends, and please support our sponsors. Let them know you appreciate them making this show possible.
Yeah, believe me, a lot of our sponsors have talked to us while we've been here in Leadville, and they know that you are supporting the show, and it does make a difference. So thank you for that. Congrats to everyone who gave this race a go, whether you finished in your goal or you need to try again to see if you can get it next time. It has been great seeing you people out there, meeting a lot of you out on the trails and the streets of Leadville. Normally, we wish you luck with your training, but for right now, we're going to say enjoy your recovery instead. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the starting line in 2020.
Yeah, Teddy! Great job, Teddy! Woo!
They didn't announce his name. Teddy who?
Ted Martin.
Ted Martin from?
From Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Awesome.
Yes, he did awesome.
And he's a listener.
He is.